Picture this. Two young women, best friends from the Netherlands, set off on what should have been the adventure of a lifetime in Panama. Within hours, they would vanish without a trace into the dense jungle, leaving behind only their terrified families and a mystery that would haunt investigators for years. But here's where this story takes a chilling turn. Months after Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon disappeared, their camera was discovered containing 90 mysterious flash photographs taken in complete darkness, deep in the jungle. These haunting images would reveal a desperate struggle for survival that lasted far longer than anyone imagined. Before we dive into this case, make sure to like this video and subscribe. This is a story that will stay with you long after it ends. What happened during those final, terrifying nights? Why were these photos taken? And what dark secrets do they reveal about the last days of two innocent travelers who simply wanted to help local children and learn Spanish? Today, we're going to examine every piece of evidence, every mysterious detail, and every unanswered question in a case that has divided experts and spawned countless theories. This is the story of a dream vacation that became an unsolvable nightmare. Kris Kremers, 21, and Lisanne Froon, 22, were the kind of young women who believed they could make a difference in the world. Both from Amersfoort in the Netherlands, they had been friends for years but had grown especially close in recent months. Kris, described by those who knew her as open, creative, and remarkably responsible, had just completed her studies in cultural social education with a specialization in art education. Lisanne, an aspiring volleyball player with an infectious optimism, had graduated with a degree in applied psychology. Just weeks before their departure, Lisanne had moved in with Kris in a dorm room, and together they worked at a local cafe called In den Kleinen Hap, saving every penny for 6 months to fund their dream trip to Panama. This wasn't just a vacation. It was supposed to be Lisanne's graduation present and an opportunity for both women to volunteer with local children while learning Spanish. On March 15, 2014, their dreams became reality as they landed in Panama, eager to explore the country before settling into their volunteer work. For 2 weeks, they toured the stunning landscapes, documenting everything on social media and sending daily text messages to their worried but excited families back home. On March 29th, they arrived in Boquete, a picturesque town in the Chiriquí province, nestled near the towering Baru volcano. They moved in with a local host family and prepared to begin their volunteer work with children, the very reason they had sacrificed so much to make this journey. April 1st started like any other day. Around 11 a.m., the two friends decided to explore the famous Pianista Trail, a popular hiking route that wound through the cloud forests surrounding the volcano. They posted on Facebook about their plans to walk around Boquete, and witnesses later reported seeing them having brunch with two young Dutch men before they set off on their adventure. According to some accounts, they borrowed a dog from the owners of the Il Pianista restaurant, a friendly companion for their jungle trek. It seemed like the perfect day for hiking. Clear skies, good weather, and the excitement of exploring one of Panama's most beautiful natural areas. But as the sun began to set that evening, something was terribly wrong. The restaurant owners became alarmed when their dog returned home alone, without any sign of Kris and Lisanne. For the first time since arriving in Panama, the daily text messages that both women had been religiously sending to their families suddenly stopped. Their host family waited through the night, hoping the young women had simply lost track of time or decided to camp under the stars. But when April 2nd dawned and Kris and Lisanne failed to show up for a scheduled appointment with a local tour guide, the horrible reality began to sink in. Two bright, capable young women had vanished into the Panamanian wilderness without a trace. The morning of April 2nd brought panic to the quiet town of Boquete. When Kris and Lisanne failed to appear for their scheduled meeting with a local guide, their host family immediately contacted authorities. The realization that two foreign tourists had disappeared sent shockwaves through the community and triggered an immediate response from local law enforcement. Within hours, search teams were mobilized to scour the El Pianista Trail and the surrounding cloud forest. The terrain was challenging: dense jungle, steep ravines, and unpredictable weather that could change from sunny to torrential rain within minutes. Local guides who knew every inch of the wilderness joined the search, their faces grim with the understanding of just how dangerous these mountains could be for inexperienced hikers. As news of the disappearance reached the Netherlands, Kris and Lisanne's families were thrown into their worst nightmare. The parents of both young women had been receiving daily updates about their daughter's adventure, filled with excitement about the volunteer work they were about to begin. Now, suddenly, there was only silence. On April 6th, just 5 days after the disappearance, both sets of parents made the agonizing decision to fly to Panama. They arrived with Dutch police, specialized dog units, and experienced detectives, transforming the local search into an international rescue operation. The families, desperate for any information, offered a substantial reward of $30,000 for any leads that could bring their daughters home. For 10 grueling days, the search continued across the treacherous terrain. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors echoing through the valleys as they searched for any sign of the missing women. Ground teams with specially trained dogs combed through thick undergrowth, following every possible path the women might have taken. The local community rallied around the effort, with residents joining search parties and sharing any information they might have about the women's last known movements. Hotel staff, restaurant workers, and shopkeepers all tried to piece together the final hours before Kris and Lisanne had vanished. But as each day passed without discovery, hope began to fade. The cloud forest was vast and unforgiving, with countless places where two people could disappear forever. Experienced guides spoke quietly about the dangers: sudden weather changes, unstable ground, deep ravines hidden by vegetation, and wildlife that could pose threats to unprepared hikers. By mid-April, the official search was scaled back, though it never completely stopped. Families clung to the possibility that their daughters were still alive somewhere, perhaps injured but surviving, waiting for rescue. The case began to attract international attention, with media outlets around the world following the story of 2 young Dutch women who had simply wanted to help children and had vanished into the jungle. Nobody could have predicted that the real mystery was just beginning. 10 weeks of agonizing uncertainty came to an abrupt end on June 14th, when a local woman made a discovery that would change everything. Walking near the riverbank close to her village of Alto Romero in the Bocas del Toro province, she spotted something that didn't belong in the natural landscape: a blue backpack partially hidden among the vegetation along the Culebra River. The woman immediately recognized this wasn't ordinary litter. The backpack was in remarkably good condition despite having been exposed to Panama's humid climate for over 2 months. When she opened it, she found items that would prove this was the breakthrough investigators had been desperately hoping for. Inside Froon's blue backpack, everything was meticulously preserved: 2 pairs of sunglasses, $88 in cash, Froon's insurance card, a water bottle, 2 bras, and most crucially, Froon's Canon camera and both women's mobile phones. The phones were in surprisingly good working condition, as if they had been carefully protected throughout their ordeal. When investigators examined the phones, they uncovered a chilling timeline that revealed the women's desperate attempts to call for help. The phone records showed that approximately 6 hours into their hike on April 1st, someone had begun making frantic emergency calls. At 4:39 p.m., Kremers' iPhone 4 had attempted to dial 1-12, the international emergency number. Just 12 minutes later, at 4:51 p.m., Froon's Samsung Galaxy had tried the same number. None of these calls had connected due to poor reception in the dense forest, but the attempts continued for days. The phone logs revealed a heartbreaking pattern of hope and desperation. Every day, sometimes multiple times, one of the phones would be turned on to search for a signal. The women tried both 112 and 911, Panama's national emergency number, but the jungle's thick canopy blocked all communication with the outside world. By April 4th, Froon's phone battery had died, and it was never used again. But Kremers' iPhone continued to be turned on intermittently until April 11th. Strangely, after April 5th, the phone was consistently activated without entering the correct PIN code, suggesting either panic, injury, or perhaps that someone else was attempting to use it. The camera contained even more disturbing evidence. Photos from April 1st showed the women happily hiking the Pianista Trail, taking typical tourist pictures at scenic overlooks. They had clearly reached the Continental Divide and continued beyond into territory that was unfamiliar and potentially dangerous. But it was what investigators found from April 8th that sent chills through everyone involved in the case. Between 7:00 p.m. and 10:00 p.m., 90 flash photographs had been taken in what appeared to be complete darkness, deep in the jungle. These weren't tourist photos. They were desperate attempts to illuminate their surroundings in pitch-black conditions. The images showed fragments of their terrifying reality. Possible glimpses of a river or ravine, a twig with plastic bags placed on a rock, what appeared to be a backpack strap and mirror positioned on another rock, and, most haunting of all, a photo showing the back of Kremers' head, her hair disheveled and wet. These photos would become the most analyzed evidence in the entire case, raising more questions than they answered. The discovery of the backpack and its contents launched the most intensive phase of the investigation, but rather than providing clear answers, it opened up a labyrinth of disturbing questions that would divide experts and fuel countless theories for years to come. The 90 flash photographs became the focal point of forensic analysis. Experts spent months examining each image, trying to piece together what had happened during those final desperate hours. The photos appeared to show the women were near water, possibly a river or stream, which made sense given where the backpack was eventually found. Some images seemed to show crude trail markers. The plastic bags on sticks suggested someone was trying to mark a path or signal for help. The timing of the photographs was particularly puzzling. Why had the women waited a full week after their disappearance before taking these pictures? What had happened during those intervening days? And why were the photos taken at night, in complete darkness, suggesting they were lost or trapped somewhere without natural light? Phone forensics revealed additional disturbing details. The fact that Kremers' iPhone was being turned on without the correct PIN after April 5th suggested something significant had changed in their situation. Either Kris was no longer able to enter her PIN due to injury or distress, or someone else was attempting to use the phone. The phone's final activation on April 11th, showing 22% battery remaining, indicated it had been carefully conserved rather than used continuously. Following the discovery of the backpack, search teams refocused their efforts along the Culebra River system. The area where the backpack was found was many kilometers from the Pianista Trail, raising questions about how it had traveled such a distance. Had the women walked that far, or had the backpack been carried by water during the region's frequent flash floods? In August, 2 months after the backpack discovery, searchers found Kremers' denim shorts on a rock on the opposite bank of a tributary, several kilometers from where the backpack had been located. Contrary to early rumors that claimed the shorts were found neatly folded and zipped, photographs later revealed they were simply draped over the rock, though their relatively good condition was still puzzling given the harsh jungle environment. The most significant discoveries came shortly after. Near where the backpack was found, searchers located a pelvis and a boot containing a foot. DNA testing confirmed these belonged to one of the missing women. Over the following weeks, at least 33 bone fragments were discovered scattered along the riverbank, confirmed through DNA analysis to belong to both Kris and Lisanne. The condition of the remains raised new questions that would haunt investigators. Froon's bones still had some skin and tissue attached, suggesting more recent death or different environmental conditions. Kremers' bones appeared bleached white, which forensic experts explained could result from extended sun exposure or other natural processes in the tropical environment. Significantly, only about 10% of Froon's bones and 5% of Kremers' bones were ever recovered, despite extensive searching. The scattered nature of the remains suggested they had been moved by water flow or other natural forces over time. a Panamanian forensic anthropologist who examined the bones made a crucial observation. Under magnification, there were no discernible scratches, cuts, or marks of any kind on the recovered remains, neither from natural causes like animal activity nor from any potential human intervention. This finding would fuel ongoing debates about what exactly had caused the women's deaths. Despite the discovery of remains and extensive forensic analysis, the case of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon remains officially unsolved, with no definitive cause of death ever determined. Dutch authorities, working alongside Panamanian investigators and international forensic experts, initially concluded that the women had most likely died from an accidental fall after becoming lost in the jungle. The official theory suggested that the women had continued past the normal endpoint of the Pianista Trail, venturing into unmarked territory where they became disoriented. The emergency calls beginning around 4:39 p.m. on April 1st indicated they realized they were in trouble while there was still daylight. The subsequent days of intermittent phone use suggested they survived for some time, possibly injured and unable to find their way back to safety. However, this official explanation satisfied few people, including the families of the victims. The mysterious 7-day gap between their disappearance and the nighttime flash photography session remained unexplained. Why would experienced hikers like Kris and Lisanne, who had been described as responsible and well-prepared, venture so far off established trails? The case's handling by Panamanian authorities came under severe criticism from Dutch officials and the families. Critics alleged that the initial search efforts were inadequate, that evidence may have been compromised, and that the investigation lacked the thoroughness such a case demanded. The significant delay between the disappearance and the discovery of remains meant that crucial evidence may have been lost to time and weather. In 2017, further investigation raised additional concerns about the original conclusions. Questions emerged about other incidents in the area, including reports of attacks on tourists and local residents. Some investigators suggested possible connections to other violent crimes in the region, though no concrete evidence was ever established to support these theories. The case has had lasting impacts on tourism in the Bocate region and has led to increased safety measures for hikers on popular trails. Local authorities have improved trail marking, enhanced communication systems, and implemented stricter guidelines for tourists venturing into remote areas. For the families of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, the lack of definitive answers has meant that closure remains elusive. Both families have continued to seek truth about what happened to their daughters, supporting independent investigations and maintaining that important questions remain unanswered. The case has also highlighted broader issues about tourist safety in remote areas of Central America and the challenges faced by international investigations in jurisdictions with limited resources. It has sparked discussions about the responsibilities of tourism operators, host countries, and travelers themselves when venturing into, potentially, dangerous environments. The mysterious photographs continue to be analyzed by experts and amateur investigators alike, with new theories emerging regularly about what they might reveal about the women's final days. The disappearance of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon represents one of the most perplexing and heartbreaking mysteries in recent memory. Two young women who embodied hope, compassion, and adventure set out to make a positive difference in the world, and instead became the center of an unsolvable puzzle that continues to haunt investigators and their families today. What makes this case so particularly disturbing is not just the tragic loss of life, but the tantalizing evidence that suggests a story we may never fully understand. Those 90 flash photographs taken in darkness and desperation offer us glimpses into a nightmare we can barely comprehend. They show us that these brave young women fought for survival far longer than anyone initially realized, but they also raise questions that may never be answered. The case serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly adventure can turn to tragedy, and how the natural world, despite its beauty, can be unforgiving to those who underestimate its dangers. It highlights the importance of preparation, communication, and respect for wilderness environments, especially in unfamiliar territories. Perhaps most importantly, this case reminds us that behind every mystery are real people, loving families who sent their daughters off on the adventure of a lifetime and never saw them return. Kris and Lisanne were not just victims of a puzzling disappearance. They were young women with dreams, aspirations, and people who loved them deeply. The questions surrounding their final days may never be fully resolved, but their story serves as both a cautionary tale and a tribute to the spirit of adventure that drives young people to explore our world and help others. If this case moved you, please like this video and subscribe for more investigative stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the official explanation fits the evidence, or do you believe there are still crucial pieces missing from this puzzle? In remembering Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, we honor not just their memory, but their original mission to help others and explore the world with open hearts. Their story, though it ended in tragedy, began with the best of human intentions.